Hello and welcome to the analysis of the Hindu newspaper dated November 28th, 2022. In this video, we are going to talk about two important newspaper articles. Now, these articles are going to be very important, very significant for the civil services examination. So, watch this video till the end. Now, these articles are important. These two articles which we are going to discuss are important, but this doesn't discard the fact that other articles which were present in the Hindu newspaper weren't important. So we have compiled a list of all the important newspaper articles which you can read from the Hindu newspaper. So if this is very clear to you, do subscribe to this channel to never miss an update for the bureaucratic way, because we put a lot of awesome videos which are going to explain the Hindu newspaper in very detail. If this is very clear to you, let's now head to the first important newspaper article. Now, this particular newspaper article becomes very important, very significant, because it talks about the Republic Day celebrations. So, what happens in this Republic Day celebrations? We celebrate our constitution making, and apart from it, what we do? We invite a guest. We need a guest. He comes from the outside. Now, this year, it is going to be the Egyptian President Sisi. And if we talk about his full name, then it is Abdel Fattah al-Sisi. Now, what does this article talk about? This article talks about the fact that Egyptian President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi, will be the chief guest at the Republic Day celebrations in January 2023, said the Ministry of External Affairs on Sunday. So now, let's talk about the Republic Day guest. Now, in 2016, it was the French President François Hollande. In 2017, it was UAE Crown Prince Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed. In 2018, it was 10 heads of the ASEAN members. And in 2019, we had the South African president. In 2020, we had the Brazilian president. And in 2023, because the celebrations didn't happen in the 2021 and 2022 owing to the COVID, we did not invite the other guest. Right, but in 2023 we did celebrate the Republic Day, but we did not invite any kind of guests because there are COVID protocols and all. But in 2023, now we have got through the COVID, we are again inviting the Egyptian President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi, and it is going to be his first visit. It is going to be the first visit from the Egyptian country, right, from the Egypt. Now let's talk about the India-Egypt relations. Now we have very deep relations with the Egypt. Now, when we talk about the relations, we all have historical, economic, diplomatic, all these kinds of relations, right? Let's not talk about first the historical relations. Now we do have very deep relations because people used to trade and all, and we also have civilizations which were very old. So it becomes very important for us to understand that we do have deep-rooted people-to-people ties. And even prior to the Common Era, Ashoka's edicts refer to his relations with the Egypt under Ptolemy II. And India and Egypt were founding members of the movement for non-alignment movement. Now, who do not know, those of you who do not know the non-alignment movement, then in the 1950s, what happened is that there were two poles or two countries which became the superpowers after the World War II ended. Now, these were the United States of America and we had the Russia. Now, the countries, all the countries, when they were choosing between the parties, the other one was the communist bloc and the other was the democratic bloc. Now, they were choosing between each other. Then India decided then it is going to side with no one. It is not going to side with the US, United States of America. It is also not going to side with the Russia. It will side with itself. And the countries which were involved in this non-alignment movements were Egypt. Now, these countries, all of these decolonized countries were under the leadership of what? India, Egypt, Hungary, all of these countries, right? So all of these countries led a second alliance, third alliance, which was known as non-alignment movement. They started the non-alignment movements, and it was very significant because these countries did not choose to become the puppet in the hands of any of these two blocks, the communist bloc and the capitalist bloc. They did not side with anyone, right? And that is why the deepening of relations happened during that phase also. Now let's talk about the political relations. Now both the countries are celebrating the 75th anniversary of establishment of diplomatic relations this year, which becomes very significant, right? And India and Egypt share close political understanding based on long history of contacts and cooperation in bilateral, regional and global issues. And apart from it, we do have economic relations with Egypt as well. We do share a lot of trade with them, and that is why in 1978 India and Egypt set up the what is known as bilateral trade agreement, and it has been operational since then. And apart from it, we also have given the most favored nation clause to each other, and bilateral relations has increased more than 5 times in the last 10 years. And apart from it, the bilateral trade has expanded rapidly in 2021-2022, amounting to 26 billion, registering a 75% increase from the previous year. And apart from it, if we talk about the exports, India's exports to Egypt, what we export to Egypt, then it amounts to US dollar 3.74 billion, now which registers a 65% increase over the same period in the financial year 2020 to 2021. And when we talk about the India importing from Egypt, then Egypt exports to India reached US dollar 3.52 billion dollar, which registered a 86% increase. So we do have a robust economic relations with Egypt, and the visiting of the Egyptian head of state is going to be very significant, very important in the turn of these relations, right? And apart from it, there are also new initiatives, new economic initiatives. So the two countries are reinventing a trusted bilateral relationship through newer initiatives such as green energy. Now in July, what happened is that Egypt signed a memorandum of understanding, that is MOU, with India's new power for $8 billion to build a clean hydrogen facility in the Suez Canal Economic Zone. And apart from it, the Indian entity backed by Abu Dhabi Investment Authority and Goldman Sachs is expected to produce 220,000 tons of clean fuel annually at the Egyptian facility. Now these initiatives are going to be noteworthy, and apart from it, the new initiatives can also come in the future because the Egyptian head of state is going to visit us. All right, so now let's talk about the diplomatic relations. We do have a very deepened diplomatic relations with Egypt as well. So Egypt, along with Bangladesh, UAE, Mauritius, Netherlands, Nigeria, Oman, Singapore and Spain, is among the guest countries invited to attend next year's G20 summit that will be conducted under the India's presidency. Now when you invite some country as guests, it means significantly, because India is holding the presidency of G20 next year, right? It has been transferred to India, right? G20 presidency. Now India is the president of the G20 right now. So these countries like Egypt are going to be very significant on the page of India, right? So these are some of the relations which we have developed between the India and Egypt. Now let's talk about the defense relations. Now defense relations are also important because there was close cooperation between the air forces, with efforts at jointly developing a fighter aircraft in the 1960s, and the IAF pilots, that is Indian Air Force pilots, had also trained Egyptian pilots from 1960s until the 1984, and Egypt participated in the multinational training exercise for friendly African countries held at Pune in 2019. And in 2021, it was the first time in 2021 that IAF and EAF, that is Indian Air Force and Egyptian Air Force joint tactical air force exercise was conducted. Joint tactical air exercise was conducted, and it was known as Desert Warriors. So in defense sector also we are seeing a lot of cooperation, and we'll expect in the future that these relations are going to be get more deepened, so that both the countries can benefit out of each other. All right, so these are some of the relations which we generally talk about, and Egypt becomes a very significant part of us, right? But what's so special about this particular invitation to the to Egypt? Now this is the first time that President of Arab Republic of Egypt will be the chief guest at our Republic Day. Now this point is very significant. This shows the probability of further deepening of ties between the two countries. All right, so this is what was written in this particular newspaper article. We have talked about the India-Egypt relations. We have explained it very deeply. We have talked about all of the relations like diplomatic relations, political relations. We have talked about the historical relations. We have talked about the economic relations as well. So these points are very important, very significant, and it is to be seen in the future how this particular situation turns out to be, or how these relations turn out to be. But for now, this is it regarding this particular newspaper article. Let's now talk about next important newspaper article. Now, this particular newspaper article talks about a scam which is known as PDS scam, public distribution scam in the state of Chhattisgarh. Now, this particular scam did not happen now; it happened in 2015. But what's more important, what's more significant is understanding what are the organizations related with it. We will not get into the politics of it. We'll understand, we'll talk about it, this particular scam as it is written in this particular newspaper article, and then we'll talk about the agencies involved in it, right? So now on November 21, CJI, that is D.Y. Chandrachud, agreed to hear the Nagrik Apurti Nigam scam, that is known as NAN scam, in the Supreme Court. This particular case was heard in the Supreme Court. He has agreed to hear this particular case in the Supreme Court after a high-octane exchange last week between the Chhattisgarh government and the Enforcement Directorate over the case's listing in the front of a fresh bench. Now, what's important is to understand what is this particular scam, that is the NAN scam, that is Nagrik Apurti scam, Nagrik Apurti Nigam scam. Now, NAN is Chhattisgarh's nodal agency for procuring and distributing food grains under the public distribution system. Public distribution system is what? Ration shops and all right, through which the disbursement of the food grains happens by the government to the people. All right. So now in 2015, what happened is that when former Chief Minister and BJP leader, that is Raman Singh, was in power, the opposition alleged that government was distributing substandard quality grains. Substandard means low quality grains under the PDS, and that officials had received kickbacks from the rice millers to allow this. Now, if you are supplying the substandard grains, that is low quality grains, then the mills owners were giving some kind of money, or some kind of they were corrupting the officials in order to provide the opportunities to supply this low quality grains. Now, you need to provide high quality grains to the people so that they can get the best amount of nutrition, but these grains were very low quality. So the state's ACB launched, that is Anti-Corruption Bureau, launched a probe into the matter. While conducting raids at the NAN office, the agency found unaccounted for cash worth over 3 crore. That is a significant amount. 3 crores of public money was lying over there, and it was found by the ACB, that is the Anti-Corruption Bureau of that particular state, that is Chhattisgarh. Now, it also tested the food samples for their quality and finding many samples of salt and rice unfit for human consumption. They were not even unfit for human consumption. They were fit for the consumption of the pigs, and that kind of food quality was being provided to the people through the ration shops. Now, the ACB booked 27 persons in the case, including 2 IAS officers who were involved in this particular scam. So now this is the particular timeline or the understanding regarding the NAN scam. But what's more important, and this particular case is highly politicized, so we'll not get into the politics of it. I'm not saying that it's not important. Politics is not important. It's important, but it's not important for the civil services examination. What's important is to analyze the other agency which this particular newspaper has talked about, that is the Enforcement Directorate. So what exactly is this Enforcement Directorate? So it is a multidisciplinary organization mandated with the task of enforcing the provisions of 2 special fiscal laws. Now, these 2 special fiscal laws are going to be FEMA, that is the Foreign Exchange Management Act, that is 1999, and Prevention of Money Laundering Act 2002. These 2 fiscal laws are going to be implemented or enforced by the Enforcement Directorate. Any violation regarding it is going to be is going to be what is going to be analyzed by the enforcement directorate, right? If this is clear to you, let's talk about the powers of the enforcement directorate. Now the directorate enforces two laws, we already know it. Now what is FEMA? It implements FEMA and PMLA. Now what is FEMA? FEMA is a civil law having quasi judicial powers for investigating suspected contraventions of the exchange control laws and regulations, with the powers to impose penalties on those adjudged guilty. And then we have the PMLA, that is Prevention of Money Laundering Act. The name suggested it is a criminal law whereby the officers are empowered to conduct inquiries to locate, provisionally attach, confiscate assets derived from the acts of the schedules offenses, besides arresting and prosecuting the money launderers. All right, so these are the functions of, or the powers of, the enforcement directorate. They basically enforce two laws. That is all you need to know, which is FEMA and PMLA. All right, so now let's talk about the composition of it. So besides directly recruiting personnel, the directorate also draws officers from the different investigating agencies, for example the customs and central excise, income tax, police, and which are on deputation, right? This is the composition of it. Let's now talk about the other functions of it, because it has other functions apart from the FEMA, implementation of FEMA and PMLA. So now processing cases of the fugitives from India under the Fugitives Economics Offenders Act is also done by them. And the sponsor cases, it also sponsors cases of preventive detention under the Conservation of Foreign Exchange and Prevention of Smuggling Acts 1974 in regard to the contraventions of the FEMA. All right, so these are some of the powers. This is the composition of it. We have talked about the other functions of it. All right, so this article becomes important only for understanding the enforcement directorate, and you also need to understand what is the non-scam in order to get a basic insight of what is going to happen in the future, right? So this is it regarding this particular newspaper article. But before that, we are also going to talk about the special courts that the enforcement directorate runs. So for the trial of an offence punishable under the section 4 of the PMLA, the central government, in consultation with the Chief Justice of High Court, designates one or more sessions courts as special courts. The court is also called the PMLA court. So now PMLA, under the any offence under the PMLA is a punishable offence, and it falls under the criminal law, and that is why you are going to analyze all of the cases, and you also have the special courts in order to fast track the cases. Now these courts are known as the PMLA courts, and apart from it, any appeal against any order passed by the PMLA court can directly be filed in the High Court for that jurisdiction. So these are some of the special courts. So a special court is formed. Now the special court is known as the PMLA court in order to implement or enforce the what is known as the PMLA. Any offense under the PMLA Act is going to be but prosecuted under the PMLA code, right? So these are some of the things about the enforcement directorate. We have talked about all of the important articles, or all the important points which were present in this particular newspaper article. So this is it regarding this particular newspaper article, and this is it for the day. Thank you from my side. Do like and share the video and subscribe to this channel. Have a good day. Bye.